Yo, it's your boy Logos. And with the current conflict going on in the Middle East involving Israel, Hezbollah, and their allies, this seemed like a very appropriate video to react to. And honestly, when I read the title, it really reminded me of the Roman Empire when they was in a decline. They was giving off land to different barbarian tribes to try to maintain peace with them, because these barbarian tribes were too strong and too powerful, and they would not be able to defend themselves, the Romans, against an invasion from them. This led to them making peace deals and giving them territory, which they would then defend and pay taxes to the Romans. We all know that didn't end quite well. A lot of these tribes that were supposed to be allies ended up turning against the Romans and contributed to their collapse in the West. That's the first thing that popped up in my head reading this title, but I'm curious to see what Thomas Sowell got to say. I'm not sure if he's going to put up the Roman example like I just did, but either way, he usually always has some type of insight or context that you really don't consider oftentimes, or at least I don't. So let's get into it.
No phrase represents more of a triumph of hope over experience than the phrase Middle East peace process. A close second might be the once fashionable notion that Israel should trade land for peace.
If somebody has more context on this accord, so this agreement that was signed between Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'm not sure what this guy is, to be honest with you, but whatever peace deal this is going on right here, tell me how that, I don't know, affected things, and how that kind of fell apart leading into this current conflict. Because from my understanding, something was worked out where peace was currently ongoing, and then overnight, it seemed like an invasion was happening. It seemed kind of crazy to me that this whole stuff came out of nowhere, considering the intelligence agencies of Israel and United States. I just can't imagine they just didn't see this stuff coming. You don't just do an invasion out of nowhere. It is planned. You get people set up and you get your weapon system set up. But who knows?
Since everybody seems to be criticizing Israel for its military response to the rockets being fired into their country from the Gaza Strip, let me add my criticisms as well. The Israelis traded land for peace, but they have never gotten the peace, so they should take back the land. Maybe a couple of generations of Palestinians in Gaza living in peace under Israeli occupation and a couple of generations of the occupation troops squelching the terrorists, militants for those of you who are squeamish, would set up conditions where the Palestinians would be free to vote on whether they would like to remain occupied or to have their own state, minus terrorists and their rockets. Casualty totals alone should be enough to show that the Palestinian people are the biggest losers from the current situation,
Exactly.
where the terrorists among them, firing rockets into Israel, can bring devastating retaliatory strikes.
Thank you. I didn't understand it when I first saw, like, why would they do this? You don't have the power or the ability to overthrow Israel. But you say you want to take back your land. I can't imagine that actually happening with the allies Israel have, and their technology and their army is much more sophisticated. Their intelligence agencies is much more trained and sophisticated. But then you do an attack against them. I could only imagine you taking into account the retaliation of it. And you don't think about the innocent civilians that's going to be dying because of your actions. At this point, Israel has a right to defend itself. You can't get upset at them because they didn't initiate this attack. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen any evidence for that to be true. It just don't make sense for me for Hezbollah to do this stuff.
Why don't the Palestinians vote for some representatives who would make a lasting peace with Israel? Because any such candidates would be killed by the terrorists long before Election Day, so nobody volunteers for that dangerous role. We don't know what the Palestinians really want, and won't know as long as they are ruled by Hamas, Hezbollah, and the like. Whatever the benefits of peace for the Palestinian population, what are the terrorists going to do in peacetime? Become librarians and furniture salesmen? So-called world opinion has been a largely negative factor in this situation. Nothing is easier than for people living in peace and safety in Paris or Rome to call for a ceasefire after the Israelis retaliate against people who are firing rockets into their country. The time to cease fire was before the rockets were fired.
Exactly.
What do calls for ceasefire and negotiations do? They lower the price of launching attacks. This is true not only in the Middle East, but in other parts of the world as well. During the Vietnam War, when American clergymen were crying out, "Stop the bombing," they paid little attention to the fact that bombing pauses made it easier for North Vietnam to move more ammunition into South Vietnam to kill both South Vietnamese and Americans.
This Napoleon ran into this problem when he was fighting his against the coalition. Austria asked for a ceasefire, and during that time, it wasn't to actually make peace or make a lasting peace. It was just to get Napoleon off their back and get some type of plan worked out with the coalition, Great Britain, Prussia, all those other different powers, Russia, to come up with some plan to help them fight some more against Napoleon. And from my understanding, Napoleon regretted giving them that ceasefire because of that exact reason. So yeah, oftentimes with certain people, certain countries, certain powers, that's repeatedly shown you they don't really want peace. They want you to be eradicated or no longer be in power. Going with a ceasefire doesn't benefit you unless you're the one that's losing. Usually a ceasefire only benefits the losing side.
After Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, if British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had heeded calls for a ceasefire, that would have simply lowered the price to be paid by the Argentine government for their invasion. Go back 100 years, before there was the United Nations and before world opinion was taken into account. An Argentine invasion of the Falkland Islands at that time would have risked not only a British counterattack to retake the islands, but also British attacks on Argentina itself. Anywhere in the world, attacks such as those on Israel today would not only have risked retaliation, but invasion and annihilation of the government that launched those attacks. Today, so-called world opinion not only limits the price to be paid for aggression or terrorism, it has even led to the self-indulgence of third parties talking pretty talk about limiting the response of those who are attacked to what is proportionate. By this reasoning, we should not have declared war on Japan for bombing Pearl Harbor. We should have gone over to Japan, bombed one of their harbors, and let it go at that.
Exactly.
Does anyone imagine that this would have led to Japan's becoming as peaceful today as it has become after Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Or is the real agenda to engage in moral preening from a safe distance and at somebody else's expense? Those who think negotiations are a magic answer seem not to understand that when A wants to annihilate B, this is not an issue that can be resolved amicably around a conference table.
Exactly. It's about survival at that point. Like, I don't want any war. I study war. I love military history. I come from a military family. I respect the fuck out of military and veterans, but I don't want to see people die. Like, I want you to be in the military, but I don't want to see you lose your life either. And that's the thing. That's what happens in war. You can't control that. And I don't understand people saying Israel is wrong for this, for retaliating when they didn't fire the first missile. Hezbollah did this stuff. They initiated this. I don't know what they thought was going to happen. I don't understand how they thought they was going to win this. And they've been planning this for a while because, like I said, you don't just show up at 5 o'clock the day before to do a damn invasion. Like, everybody, let's get together, call some crazy shit, and let's go and invade Israel. It'll be fun. It'll be wild. It's like Area 51 or something. It's not a meme. This is war. So they prepared this stuff. They didn't care about the consequences. They didn't care about anybody else dying. They thought it was justified, and they think they're freeing their state. You can think whatever you want, but those missiles gonna tell the truth. It's not worth it. I don't want to see anybody die. You have innocent civilians on both sides getting hit. Sometimes it's controllable, sometimes it's not. I'm of the opinion that these terrorist organizations, well, it's not my opinion at this point. It's like known fact. Hezbollah, Hamas, ISIS, these organizations, they use human shields. They'll put like fighters and soldiers in buildings where people live at, civilians, because they know it makes it harder for other people to fire rockets on them and destroy them. But they'll still try to kill soldiers from the opposing side if they like travel down the street or anything like that. They're perfectly fine with putting other civilians of their own people at risk, but at the same time crying about being the victim of somebody else. They're evil and they're pieces of shit. And I don't really have any mercy for them. For the civilians of the people within these countries that are the victims of terrorism or are forced to live in these battlegrounds, these cities where operations take place and they don't want to be involved in this conflict. And to be honest with you, if you ask them, they just want to live peacefully. They don't want any war from any side. Hamas, Hezbollah, Israel, anybody else. Those people don't get listened to. And I feel bad for those people. But in terms of Hamas getting bombed, what you thought was going to happen? This doesn't seem like, this sounds like even Hitler invading Russia was ridiculous, but that makes a lot more sense in comparison to this. I don't know what they thought was going to happen. Either way, you're getting what you asked for. You wanted a fight, you're getting more than that. Israel, from my understanding, constantly has their citizens training. And by like constantly training, I'm saying like the military is always constantly training, but I think their citizens have to take like, they have to do what, 2 years or 3 years or 4 years in the military. Like it's like there's no negotiation unless you have a disability or something like that. They understand how important defending their country is and how they're surrounded by people that really don't like them. And it's been that way for decades. So once again, I don't know what you thought was going to happen, but here we are. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm going to do another video from Breaking Points, who will hopefully give me more history on this conflict. Or I'm sorry, the history of everything leading up to this conflict. Because honestly, I don't really know. Everything is so muddied and everything has propaganda mixed in between. And it's like decades ongoing. So hopefully they can give me some more context and I'll react to that too. But let me know what you know, think in the comments and down below. I'm sorry, let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you have any resources, any videos, any articles, put that too and I'll read it, I'll check it out, or react to it. But that's it for now. It's your boy Logos. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe.